All right, so today we are going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects of all time, Lord of the Rings. All right, so despite Lord of the Rings being maybe the most read book in the world, I think second only to the Bible, most people I talk to about Lord of the Rings have never read it. They're just movie fans, which is fine. I'm not throwing shade here. I want people to enjoy Tolkien's work however they can get it. But when you're just a movie fan, a lot of stuff is very confusing. So I'm going to answer a question that a lot of people have in their confusion from watching the movies. The most asked question I get. So, how many people watching this have been like, you've never read it, but you watched the movies, you loved them. The first time you watched Fellowship of the Ring, you're like, okay, this first movie rocked. There's little green dudes running around stabbing people. That's awesome. There's a giant winged demon. There's little hungry dudes, and they're on an adventure. There's so many little guys. There's horses. This is awesome. I'm all in, right? Let's go, baby. And then Gandalf dies, and you're like, whoa, huge plot twist. They killed the old man, and he went out like a G, and you're just like, this is great. I cannot wait to see the second movie. You're watching The Two Towers with like your friend who's way into Lord of the Rings. You're in the middle of the movie. All of a sudden, Gandalf shows back up, and he has new drip, and you're like, okay, what is happening? Like, what is how is he, isn't this guy geriatric and also supposed to be dead? And now he's back and he has new threads. And you're like looking at your friend and he's just like, yeah, isn't this awesome? And you're like, no, I'm confused. And then you think to yourself, well, it's a fantasy thing. They'll explain it over time. And they don't. Basically, Gandalf is like, I'm a wizard, don't worry about it. And people are like, seems good enough for me. And you're like, what is happening? Someone explain to me why you've got new stuff now and you're not dead. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you, what is Gandalf? So, this is the question we're going to deep dive now. All right, what is Gandalf? Well, he's a wizard. Okay, what is a wizard? In Middle Earth, wizards aren't like how we think about them today. Books like Harry Potter have rotted our brains, and now we think that every wizard is like a dorky dude that's doing stuff like lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Lightning bolt! Wizards in Middle Earth are more subtle than that, and cool and awesome, alright? Listen, everyone loves a lightning bolt or a giant fireball, but that's not what wizards in Middle Earth are up to. He's a wizard. What is a wizard? A wizard is an Istari. That did not help, and that's fair. What's an Istari? Istari is the plural word of Istar. The word Istar is a Quenya word. Quenya is one of the Elvish language in Middle Earth. Don't lose me, okay? Istar means one who knows. So, Istari is an Elvish word that means guy who knows a lot of stuff. That doesn't help anybody, but this is important for later. Okay, break. Let's start. Okay, let's start from the beginning. So before Middle Earth existed, there was Eru Iluvatar, the one god, the almighty being that exists outside of space and time. Tolkien famously hated allegory, but he was also Catholic. Eru's totally not God. Eru decides, man, I'm God, I should create. So he makes the Ainur. The Ainur are helpers. They're like angels. So Eru and all the Ainur get together and they decide to sing creation into existence in something called the Ainu Lindale, okay? So all these guys start to have an awesome freaking rock concert. But unfortunately, they had one guy who sucked, and he was with them, and his name is Melkor, and he's emo. Don't give him the aux chord, he's gonna play something terrible like Silverstein, alright? So, they're having an awesome rock concert, and then Melkor decides, I'm actually gonna ruin this, and he starts doing discordant tones. So Melkor sucks, alright? And he basically messes up creation by singing the worst possible music, okay? So during the Ainulindale, Melkor messes it up, and a bunch of the Ainur kind of go with Melkor, and they start singing his discordant tone. They end up creating Arda, which is basically just Earth, okay? At this point, a bunch of the Ainur are like, well, we made this, let's go down there and live. So they all pop down to Arda, which because of Melkor and his cronies is all messed up and it's kind of formless. It doesn't really have the form of Earth that we would imagine. So they're all down here living, and of course Melkor and his friends, they suck and decide to start fighting everybody and ruining things, right? Because the Ainur are trying to make Arda nice, and Melkor is like, no, actually, I'm goth and emo, and the world is pain, and also you will feel my pain. So he starts messing everything up. All the Ainur decide to back someone being in charge, and they pick a guy named Manwë. Now, Manwë isn't as strong as Melkor or even a bunch of the other Ainur, but he understands Eru, the creator of all things, the most, and they think that's the highest good, so they pick him. So, they're doing war. Everything's getting crazy. Melkor and his friends are freaking out, being emo. But eventually, after everyone's getting their butts kicked, there's a guy named Tulkas. Tulkas is pretty hardcore. Melkor is emo, and he sucks, and he likes to throw fits, and no one really knows what to do about it. Tulkas shows up, and he lifts weights, and is jacked, and loves to wrestle. He basically goes, Melkor, what are you doing? Beats the ever-loving hell out of him, steps on his face, and is like, I'm actually in charge now. So, at this point, Arda begins to have form, and now it's awesome, and we've got people living here, and it becomes an actual place. So Arda has form now. Dwarves, elves, and men are all living on Arda, or Earth, and they're enjoying themselves on the continent of Middle Earth, which, wouldn't you know it, is in the middle. So, Melkor gets out of prison. He doesn't break out, they let him out because he's basically like, I'll be good, and they believe him? I don't know. So, they let him out. Recidivism rates are high. People love to reoffend. We know this. So, he immediately is like, oh, by the way, I'm still a psychopath, teams up with a gigantic spider and tries to destroy and control the world again. A giant war breaks out. Men and elves and dwarves handle business over the course of a lot of time, and they have to fight a bunch of dragons. The war is so crazy that an entire part of the continent sinks into the ocean. There's a dragon that's like the size of a mountain, and it gets sniped out of the air by a guy flying a ship that goes in the sky. It's a whole thing, all right? Don't worry about any of that. We'll cover that another time. All you need to know is Melkor is done for good, he's chained up, he's in prison, and now Arda is running smoothly. So Melkor is very powerful, right? He is a version of the Ainur called a Valar. Valar are like super powerful beings that are essentially, I would call them demigods, okay? They don't have the power to really create life or anything, but they're up there in terms of power. Now, not including evil Melkor, there are 14 other Valar, all right? Now, the Valar, they all don't want to live on Middle-earth. They peace out and live on another piece of the continent they set aside for themselves that's basically paradise. Now, they're living over there. They have helpers who I would compare to angels, and those helpers are called the Maiar, all right? But let's not forget, Melkor also had helpers. A bunch of the Maiar ended up being evil, and they helped Melkor out. So when he was thrown in prison, where did all those evil spirits go? Well, a ton of them just escaped into Middle-earth to hide. One of these guys was Melkor's #1 lieutenant, a little dude named Sauron with big dreams. So, eventually, Sauron shows back up. And he's like, by the way, I'm the new Dark Lord now. I'm out of my mind. I run this show. Now, you may be asking, hey, What's the deal? Didn't the Valar beat Melkor one of those times? Well, they did. So you're like, why doesn't one of the super powerful Valar just come down and beat up Sauron, who's just a Maiar? He's like second tier. But here's the deal. Arda is full of men and elves and dwarves, and they are all exercising free will, which is one of the most important things in Middle-earth. The Valar are so powerful that if they show up to Middle-earth, they could accidentally affect free will. So they can't show up to Middle-earth because they have to preserve free will. Now, I know Tolkien hated allegory, but he was very Catholic. So the 14 Valar, the most powerful beings on Middle-earth, can't intervene to stop Sauron because they have to preserve free will. But Sauron is a Maiar, second-tier being. So they think, okay, we'll send our own Maiar. So they pick 5 Maiar, and they go ahead and they send them to Middle-earth in order to help. These 5 Maiar show up in the form of the Istari, or the wizards. They are Gandalf the Grey, Radagast the Brown, 2 blue wizards named Alatar and Palando, who we never meet, but they would have been awesome to do something about in Rings of Power, but that's the worst show ever and we should not support it. And there was a 5th and final wizard, the wizard that's supposed to be in charge, this unhappy gentleman here, Saruman the White. Now you may be saying to yourself, why don't 5 Maiar just team up, go sicko mode, and start blowing holes in Sauron with Hadoukens and stuff? Now that's a great question. They can't. They actually all show up as old, feeble men because of powerful beings' propensity for being corrupted. So they show up as old, wise men in order to advise the people of Middle-earth. They're military advisors, essentially. So they're here to guide the people of Middle-earth towards the correct solutions and not necessarily intervene themselves, because if they search for and gain power, it will corrupt them, as evidenced by Saruman. So, what is Gandalf? Gandalf is an Istari. An Istari is a Maiar, which is a lesser form of the Ainur, okay? All this is to say, Gandalf is an angel. Gandalf is an angel sent by demigods to help the people of Middle-earth. That is why he can go toe-to-toe with a Balrog, who, guess what? Balrogs are also Maiar. They're lesser angels. Gandalf and the Balrog are technically the same being in different physical forms. That's why Gandalf can go toe-to-toe, lay the hammer, and then when his physical body is destroyed, his spirit just goes back to where it was, and then the Valar are like, hey, we see what you're doing, we love your work, great job. By the way, that Saruman guy sucks and he's evil now. You're actually the head wizard in charge. Here's some white threads. Get back there and do your thing. So, that's why he shows up with new white clothes. Because Gandalf is an angel and he wasn't in charge of all the other angels, and now he is. And that's why he plays such a significant role in the story. So, when someone's like, what is a wizard in Middle-earth? You now get to go, actually, I can answer that. It's an angel called an Istari. So, that is what Gandalf is. How much more complicated is that than it needed to be? But that's Tolkien. And by the way, almost everything here has multiple names. Melkor is also called Morgoth. It's a whole thing. So, Gandalf is awesome. And honestly, when you realize that they're not just like Harry Potter wizards doing lightning bolts, it makes it way more interesting. Gandalf is an eternal being who has been around since the start of creation, and he's directly interested in the free will and lives of those on Middle-earth, and it's actually really beautiful and cool. So I hope you enjoyed this little fact session about Middle-earth, I probably pronounced something wrong or even said a wrong fact. And boy, howdy, don't worry, people who love Tolkien will go ahead and correct me, and they probably won't be nice about it. But in any case, this is one of my favorite subjects of all time. I would love to just deep dive the history of Middle-earth, starting from creation all the way to the Third Age, but that sounds like a lot. Honestly, just drawing on this whiteboard exhausted me. So I hope you all found this informative. And if you're a casual Lord of the Rings person, now you know some deep, deep cut lore. And if you already knew this stuff, I hope you just enjoyed rehearing the information. In any case, I love you guys. Thanks. Bye.